This video is for people who are not good with allegations. So I'm going to do a tutorial on how to do alligation using an example. So if you're good with alligation already, I'll just skip this video. So I'm going to read this question. It says, a prescription requires 100 milliliters of a 20% solution. You have 50% and 10% in stock. How much of each solution should be mixed to make 100 milliliters of 20% solution? So whenever you do alligation, you need a higher concentration and a lower concentration, and you're going to be making some concentration in the middle. Higher concentration, and then you got another solution that's lower concentration, and you're trying to make something in the middle. So in this example, we have a 50% stock and a 10% stock, and we're going to make a 20% stock. So you notice 20%, the middle concentration, it's in between 50 and 10. So you can only do alligation if you have a higher concentration with a lower concentration. So if you're trying to make like a 60% solution, this would be impossible, because if you have a 50% and 10%, how the hell can you make a 50-60%? You can't like make this more concentrated. Same thing if you have something below 10%. If you're trying to make a 5% instead of 20%, if this was 5%, this is impossible also. You can't make a lower percentage no matter how much of this 10% you use with this 50%. It's impossible, because you're using two of these concentrations to make something in the middle. Also realize that when I say two different solutions, I don't have to have numbers. They could just say like water or something. If you see something like water or some other buffer, that means 0%. And you can technically use alligation. If you have like to make a 50% and water and you're trying to make a 20%, that's possible, because water, you just make it a 0% on your alligation calculation, which I'll show you later. So for this particular question, so I got a 50% is one solution, 10% is the other solution. So when you do your alligation, you draw like these lines like this. So you have one concentration here on the left, top left. So I'm going to put 50% and another concentration down here, which I'm going to put 10%. It doesn't matter if you put 50 down here or 10 up here. I know some people, they like to have the higher concentration on top, but it doesn't really matter. And in the dead center here, you put whatever you're trying to make, you want. So it's going to be the middle, something in the middle between these two. So it makes it easier, obviously. So 20, you want to make it 20%, so you put 20% here. So after I set these up, the higher concentration and a lower concentration, and then a middle concentration that I'm trying to make in the middle, I'm going to go through the lines and subtract this number from this number and put a number down here. I'm going to subtract 50 minus 20 and then follow the line all the way through. So it's going to be 30 down here. And this 30 represents parts. And then so I'm going to do the same thing with this. The 10%, I follow the line all the way through. 10 subtract 20, that equals 10. And that always represents parts. So the next thing I'm going to do is add up the total parts together. So 10 parts plus 30 parts, that equals 40 parts total. And so then when you do alligation, you always take the individual parts, divide that by the total number of parts, which is 40. And then that's what you're going to be using for the 50% concentration. So you only look at this top half here, because the first thing you do is to calculate this amount of 50% concentration to use. So this represents that proportion of how much to use total. And then you multiply this by the total volume, which is your desired amount of volume, because we want to make 100 milliliters. So that's what I'm going to put here. And then when you multiply that together, 10 over 40 times it by 100, this equals 25 milliliters. This represents how much of the 50% concentration I'm going to use. So this is technically part of one answer, because they want to know how much of each solution should be mixed. to make 100 milliliters 20%. So I'm going to be using 25 milliliters of the 50% concentration. So that's half of the answer. So next thing I'm going to do is the same thing to the bottom half. This bottom half right here. So I'm just going to take the 30 parts, each part, so 30 parts over the total amount of parts, which is 40. And then multiply that by the total volume, because we want to make 100 milliliters. And then when you multiply this through 30 over 40 times it by 100, that equals 75 milliliters. So this represents how much of the 10%, because I stay here this whole line. It's 75 milliliters of the 10%. So that's my final answer. I'm going to be using how much of each solution should be used to make this. I need 25 milliliters of the 50% plus 75 milliliters of the 10%. And so next thing I like to do is to double check to make sure I did everything correctly. So does 25 milliliters of 50% and 75 milliliters of the 10% equal to 100 milliliters of the 20%? So to do this, I'm going to calculate the amount of drug combined between these two. So for the 50% concentration, I have 25 milliliters, and then multiply that by the 50% concentration, which is 50 grams over 100 milliliters. That's what 50% means. 50% means 50 grams per 100 milliliters. That's how I got this number here, because I am using 25 milliliters of the 50%. So milliliters here cancel out milliliters here. And so when I solve for this, I get 12.5 grams. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for the 10% concentration. So I calculated 75 milliliters that I'm going to use of the 10% concentration. And then when I add these, multiply these together, I get 75 times 10 over 100. That equals 7.5 grams. So total in my 100 milliliters of this that I just calculated, I have 12.5 plus 7.5, which is 20 grams. And this is in the total. If I put this in a total volume, it's in the 100 milliliters, because 25 plus 75. So total drug over total volume, 20 grams I just calculated is the total drug. And then the total volume here is 100 milliliters, right? 25 milliliters plus the 75 milliliters, that's 100. So 20 grams over 100 milliliters, that's the same thing as 20%, which is what I have here, right? So that's how I know for sure I did the question right, by using 25 milliliters of the 50% and 75 milliliters of 10%, because I was able to get my desired concentration here, 20%. So if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. Thank you.